Chapter 76. Lisa was purposely clinging to him. Lisa gazed at them. One was tall and lanky, and the other was slim. The two of them genuinely seemed incredibly intimate as they stood closely to one another, and James was even carrying a small gift bag in his hand. The shop's name was drawn on the gift bag. It was called Carving Time. Lisa walked over in a few frantic steps. She tugged James's arm all of a sudden and quietly put herself between the two of them. James, she lifted her head and smiled at James. Then, she extended out her hand as she wanted to receive the item in his hand. "What are you holding? Let me have a look." James subconsciously evaded her. "It's nothing." Upon being averted, Lisa's face froze. She looked at James and pursed her lips. "Didn't you bring someone along? Why do you still need to carry this? I'll help you carry it." James could not resist but gaze at Sarah at the side. She stood there looking at the two of them. Her face seemed to be fairly tranquil. James answered, "No need, it's nothing heavy." It was difficult for Lisa to say anything again. She could only bend her head and silently glare at Sarah. Sarah did not know what she had done wrong to make Lisa despise her so much in such a short period. But thinking about it, it would have been even more weird for Lisa to like her. Lisa gazed at the two of them. "Why are the two of you here?" James answered, "Oh, we just came from eating dinner at the family estate." Once again, Lisa reproachfully turned her head and surreptitiously gazed at Sarah. "Why did you walk back?" James remarked. "We just walked back since we had nothing else to do." "Why are you here?" Lisa raised her head. She glanced at James with a face full of cuteness. She simply did not care that Sarah was still beside her observing. "I just wanted to buy something to eat. I didn't expect to see you two, James. There just happens to be a cafe over there. The ambience is rather wonderful, actually. Accompany me there so that we can sit inside, all right?" Her eyes paused. She turned her head back and remarked to Sarah, "Sarah, it's rare for us to bump into each other here. Let's go over together and sit inside for a bit." Sarah gazed at James. She did not really want to intrude upon their quality time together. However, just when she was going to answer, "No, I'll go home first," she felt Lisa abruptly connect her arm through hers as if feigning to be close to her. "Let's go. We'll go there together and sit for a while." Sarah was simply drawn along. She tilted her head back speechlessly and glanced at James. However, James's expression was aloof as usual. She could not determine what exactly he was thinking. Sarah could only follow them into the cafe. After sitting down, Lisa naturally sat beside James. She looked at Sarah across from her, smiled, and said, "What does Miss Sarah want to drink?" Sarah said, "I'm fine with anything." To be honest, she did not particularly like drinking coffee. She could not identify the difference between the flavors of the different types of coffee. Lisa took command and brought a waitress over. She said plainly, "3 Jamaican Blue Mountain coffees." Lisa grinned and continued, "James only likes drinking Blue Mountain coffee. The Blue Mountain coffee from this business is pretty authentic." "Right, James." James could sense that Lisa was purposefully leaning near to him. He could not help but be slightly unhappy. James said, "Anything is fine." Lisa lifted her head to gaze at James with a countenance full of tenderness. "James, you've even lost weight, have you? Been becoming weary recently. You have to care more about getting rest. Don't be so anxious about your job. Your health is the most important." James felt Lisa's hand rest on his arm. He automatically felt slightly uncomfortable and averted her touch by moving backward. He effortlessly brushed away her hand. Lisa realized that he was actually evading her. She became increasingly enraged and stepped nearer so that she would be virtually leaning against his body. James's brow began to wrinkle significantly. Even though he recognized that Lisa had a childish temper and was purposefully putting on a show for Sarah because she was envious, he still felt miserable. She had gone a little overboard by doing this. Again, Lisa appeared to suddenly remember that there was someone else besides them. She let out a dry cough and smiled at Sarah in embarrassment. Sarah pushed up the corners of her mouth and gazed at her carelessly. Although she felt uneasy in her heart, she yet seemed cool on the surface, as if she was unconcerned otherwise. What else could she do? Lisa and James were once a couple regardless. Sarah did not even need Lisa's targeted reminders right now to realize this. Lisa smiled at Sarah and asked her as if she was really worried recently. "I seem to have seen a lot of news about you. I still have to congratulate you. That television series looks to be doing really well." Sarah grinned as well. "Thank you," Lisa responded. "It's true that I don't understand the workings of artists like you, but I think that this is probably regarded successful as an artist," as she stated this. She placed her lips to the cup and took a mouthful of coffee. She looked as if she believed herself superior, and her eyes carried a trace of unconcealed condescension. Sarah could not be bothered to put on a pretense in front of her. She raised her head haughtily and smirked. "It's only just the beginning. I'm still very far away from achieving success, but ultimately, I'm still young. So I have a long journey ahead of me." Lisa had grown up together with James since they were kids. Her age was likewise extremely comparable to James's, naturally. She was also considerably older than Sarah. No matter how well she took care of herself, the gap in age between her and Sarah could still be evident. When Lisa heard Sarah say this, her countenance altered immediately, but because Nathan was still alongside her, it was difficult for her to say anything. She could only suppress her wrath. She grinned at Sarah and replied, "Is that so? Then I'll congratulate you on your accomplishment in advance. But I didn't expect you to even know Nathan. It looks like your relationship with him is truly not bad," Sarah answered neutrally. "Yes, we're friends too. Nathan is really a good person," Lisa intentionally stated. "He's very nice to people and really knows how to look after them. You two even looked like quite a decent match on television." At this moment, James stood up promptly and remarked unhappily, "That's enough. Lisa, it's time for us to go home too." Lisa's mood dimmed swiftly. She stood up with a swishing sound as well and stared at James angrily. "What's wrong, James?" Right at that moment, James's phone started ringing. James glanced meaningfully at Lisa. He saw that the number was Ryan's, afraid that anything had popped up. He went out first to answer the call. After Lisa saw James leave, she turned back and gazed at Sarah. She said, "Sarah, what exactly are you doing?" Sarah sneered. She gazed at Lisa's features change instantly after James left. Her acting talents were pretty superb. Sarah said, "What did I do?" Lisa snorted and continued, "You made James carry things for you and even made him accompany you to walk on the streets at night. You know how risky it is for James to undertake such a thing. Dangerous, of course. Do you suppose that James is like you, a tiny artist who has nothing at all? His life is worth more than 100 of yours. If something happens to him, do you know what the implications will be? I just knew it. Living together with a commoner like you would sooner or later be disastrous for him. Sarah, if you want to die, it's up to you, but don't pull James along with you." Sarah scoffed as she gazed at Lisa. "Miss Lisa, in your eyes, is James just some vulnerable item that faces perpetual danger and can't go anywhere at all?" Chapter 77. You definitely misunderstood her. Lisa did not expect James to even dare to react. James answered, "That's right. I did come out to walk the streets with him and to go home together. That's because in my perspective, he's not a man who's in danger. He's a man who has the right to enjoy life and has the right to be an ordinary person. He's my husband and the two of us share the same bed. Given our rank in relationship, there's no dispute as to whether we can or cannot do something. He helped me carry items and accompanied me on a stroll because we're a married couple. You. Indeed, I don't understand the danger that you're talking about. Because in my perspective, he was never an important person. He's my husband." Sarah's face became scarlet with wrath at James' words. James only snickered. "So no matter how low I am in your eyes, I'm Ryan's wife." "Great, Miss Sarah. I don't need you to condemn my life with Ryan." When she was finished, James turned around instantly and went. James only let out a breath when she came outdoors. She stood by the entrance and glanced at the sky that was dyed entirely neon. She was also quite nervous about becoming a burden to Ryan. Because the divide in their lifestyles was so vast, there were many things that she did not understand and many things that she was perplexed about. She closed her eyes and sighed before striding forward. However, when Ryan returned from outside, he noticed that only Sarah was remaining in the cafe. Upon seeing Ryan return, Sarah wept and collapsed onto the table. Ryan froze before coming over to inquire, "What happened, Sarah?" Sarah raised her head, her eyes gleaming with tears. "Ryan, I really don't want you to live together with James anymore." Ryan grimaced as he gazed at her. "What happened?" Sarah gazed at him helplessly and pitifully. "Do you know what James did to me just now?" Ryan's brow twitched. "What did she do?" She told me that it was you and her who are husband and wife. Whatever she does is always correct. And whatever I do is always wrong. She and you have an equal relationship. Then what am I? Ryan, am I the third party? But plainly, you and I are a pair. Why did she say this to me? Why did she hurt me like this? Ryan lowered his eyes to gaze at her. Did she really say that? Yes, Sarah responded. If you don't believe it, you can go and ask her if she said that the two of you are the married couple. When you were here, she did not even say a word the instant you left. She immediately started saying stuff like this to me. What exactly does she mean? That's enough. Sarah, I think you misunderstood what she said. Ryan said, that's impossible. Sarah answered, I'm not a fool either. I heard what she said plainly, word for word. Why, Ryan? Could it be that you don't believe me? Ryan sighed. He sat down and gazed at her. No. I just sense that she's not that kind of person. You probably misinterpreted her. That's why you mistook her remarks. All right, Sarah, don't cry anymore. However, Sarah bit her lips and felt even more upset. Sure. Let's go, Ryan said. I'll get someone to take you home. You're not coming with me? Sarah remarked dolefully as she lifted her little face. Ryan did not see James. He was anxious to find out where James had gone and what exactly had transpired. He was faintly frightened that she was upset. So after considering for a minute, he nevertheless responded to Sarah, I'll look for you tomorrow again. Right now, I still have an essential thing to deal to. Sarah recalled that he had gone out in a rush earlier to answer a call. She assumed that he probably did have an urgent concern. She thought to herself that she was surely not like James, who was not considerate of his hectic schedule. She gently looped her arm through his. She was careful not to touch his body so as to avoid him from coming out in a rash. However, she also longed to feel his body heat. She gazed at his perfectly gorgeous looks and murmured quietly to him, in that case, go ahead and attend to your matters. Don't tire yourself out too much. I won't be able to bear it. I realize that you're busy, so I won't interrupt you. Ryan drew in a big breath and murmured to her, go home, HM. Remember to look for me tomorrow once you're free. I'll be waiting for you. All right. Ryan agreed earnestly after Sarah left. Ryan wondered where James had gone. In no time, his subordinates brought him along, and together they spotted James, who was wandering alone by the side of the road in the direction of their home. Ryan came up with James and said, why did you leave on your own? James assumed that he would have to soothe Sarah for quite a period, seeing that he had come over so fast. She murmured perplexedly, why didn't you properly accompany Sarah and chat with her? Seeing that Sarah had been so upset, James also realized that Sarah would absolutely not have anything pleasant to say about her. Once she left, Ryan lifted his eyebrows and stared at her. Why? Did you want us to chat for longer? James answered. Yes, it was rare for you to have stumbled into each other. You're really so thoughtful. Should he congratulate her for being such a generous and good wife? James gazed at him. Of course. That's the case. My personality is just. I forgot how the idiom goes. It's utilized to characterize someone who's generous. More tolerance will make you a bigger person. Yes, it describes me exactly. Ryan lowered his head and brushed his eyes over her chest. HN. Your breasts are big. James looked down and covered herself. Get lost, you hoodlum. Ryan broke into a smile. He only calmed when he saw that she was not unhappy. However, he recalled what Sarah had said and tilted his head to ask her, you told Sarah just now that we're a married couple. So whatever we do is always right. She simply knew that Sarah would not say anything good about her dot. She did not seem to have expressed it in that way. But there was no problem with construing it as this either. Yes, is that not the case? James purposefully acted foolish and tilted her head to look at him. Ryan gazed at James, blinking her eyes innocently with her face tilted. She looked really adorable. And Ryan helplessly shook his head. Yes, your statements were right. Lisa answered, of course, you're my husband, and I'm your wife. Didn't you often mention that we're a married pair? And that it's only appropriate for you to look after me, so? Taking me on a stroll, and helping me hold items are things a husband should do. Isn't that right, hubby? She was becoming bolder with him. She yanked on his arm when she got up to him and swung it back and forth. Tell me, hubby, am I not right? Ryan felt his heart about to melt. He couldn't help but smile and stare at her. Okay, you're right. Only then did Lisa smile. She realized that they had almost reached Ryan's villa. The two of them stepped in together. Once inside, Lisa eagerly took out the mound of homemade soaps they had produced, although they appeared little weird. The colors were still extremely stunning. She honestly felt a little reluctant to use them. Ryan watched from behind her and pointed at the ones Lisa had constructed. These are really awfully ugly. That's impossible. This is called art. Do you understand it or not? It's just like Picasso's work. This is termed abstract art. Ryan shook his head. You're so bad with your hands and feet. Worse still, you always have an excuse for everything. Lisa turned to glare at him. A maid watched them from the side. Seeing how joyful they appeared, she couldn't help but exclaim, "Madam, sir, did you make these? They look pretty good." Lisa swiftly turned her head. "Yes, I made all the nice-looking ones. The awful ones were made by Ryan." She took up the soaps and glanced at them. "What am I going to do? I can't bear to utilize any of them." Ryan leaned in close and added, "There's no reason for you to hesitate. We can always make more in the future." He scooped up a few, grinned, and looked at her name on the soaps. Then, he turned to her and said, "You use the ones I made, and I'll use the ones you made." Upon hearing this, Lisa's face instinctively turned crimson red. Ryan dropped his head and murmured, "When you use it, won't you feel like I'm touching you all over your body?" Chapter 78. I'll do whatever I wanted. Lisa was sitting at the side. She could feel James's body heat get stronger. He was standing right behind her, his body crushed against her back. He could even smell the perfume of shampoo from her head. Although she definitely used the same shampoo and body wash that he did, he felt that the aroma on her body was different. The perfume seemed to be mingled with the fragrance of a woman. He felt as if the scent was enveloping his nose and going deep into his heart. He immediately moved somewhat closer again. He lowered his head, and the tip of his nose nearly brushed her hair. Lisa sat rigidly erect. As she felt his breathing, she did not dare to move another inch. The maids in James's household were all quite clever. Seeing that the two of them were here, the maids stealthily retreated in no time. Only the two of them were left in the room. From above, James glanced at the white and pure expanse of her neck. He felt the impulse to partially touch it. Lisa could sense a hot hand steadily creeping closer to her. Thus, she twisted her head sharply and stared at James behind her. She scowled at him and asked, "Hey, James, what are you doing?" Upon being caught red-handed while trying to touch her covertly, James momentarily felt humiliated. But when he saw Lisa's inquiring stare, he raised his eyebrows and inquired calmly, "What am I doing?" Lisa swept her eyes over his hand. "Stop groping me behind my back, Lisa. We're a married couple." "How can you call this groping?" "Of course this is groping, you hoodlum." James's face was pulled tight. In a moment, he was sitting before Lisa so closely that she became immediately astonished. She simply felt James directly cuddle up to her and swiftly kiss her once on her lips. It was like a dragonfly skimming across the lake, but it still made her feel blazing hot. Lisa's face suddenly transformed into the color of a red apple. James felt that he really very much enjoyed how Lisa was so sensitive. Her face seemed as if it would break upon being prodded. Her skin was so delicate and flushed red so readily. Immediately, Lisa leaned aside and moved slightly further from his face. James said, "You're my wife. I'll kiss you if I want to. You got that? Get lost, hoodlum." Lisa covered her mouth and yelled. Wickedness flared on James's face. His gaze followed her gorgeous neck and continued downwards. "If I'm a hoodlum, I won't just stop here. You actually expect me to behave like one, you?" James erupted into a smile and directly kissed her lips. Lisa let out a quiet breath. She simply felt the tip of his tongue high-handedly take her of all her air. Although it was not ideal for James to be in close contact with ladies owing to his disease, he reflexively ran his hand up her frontal chest and grasped at it. He fumbled at it and softly kneaded it. His breathing gradually began to speed. Her body was really too soft. It appeared to make him loath that he could not knead it into a pulp. Lisa felt him exert more force. The sluggish feeling of pain was accompanied by a powerful electric current. It made her body begin tingling as well. She instinctively whined. Her body turned limp from time to time. Her body was virtually relaxing in his grip. Her hands involuntarily came up to rest on his shoulders. However, she felt his hands slide to her back and touch her all over. James felt his body burning incredibly hot. The lust that was nearly about to break out of his body was incredibly hard for him to handle. He truly wanted to just forget everything else and devour her now. However, exactly at this moment, he heard someone hammering on the door outside. With his face flushed scarlet, James released the woman in his embrace with a lot of trouble. He asked aggressively in the direction of the door, "What happened, sir?" "First young master was here. Richard was here." James could only let go of her for the moment. As he stared at Lisa's fully scarlet face, he could not help but give it one final delicate peck again before he stood up instantly. He did not take another look at her so as not to immediately lose control and just seize her. Lisa was still in a daze. She realized that James had pulled open the door and fled. Her face was tinted brightly red and full of bashfulness. She pinched herself once viciously. Was she dreaming, this James? What precisely was he doing? James came down the steps step by step. Sure enough, he saw Richard down below. Outside, the bodyguards from the National Security Agency were awaiting orders. It appeared like they were here on official business. "Big brother, this had better be something important." Richard gazed at James as he walked down. "Why, did I disrupt something good?" James's eyebrows jumped up. "Naturally. I'm not a bachelor like Big Brother. I'm someone who got married. Of course, I don't let just anyone into my house. Next time, can you at least give me a heads up in advance?" Richard grinned and shook his head as he stared at James. "All right, I understand. For a time, I forgot that you're already married. But because you appear to be loving your married life right now, next time, I'll attempt to get acclimated to it too." James sat down together with Richard. Only then did Richard set the tablet computer in his palms in front of James. "Someone sent this to me." James bent his head and stared at it. It was Richard on the bed with a woman. It appeared like it had probably been taken in secret. However, although the two of them could not be turned entirely naked, their garments were disordered. Still, what they had just witnessed was evident. James instinctively lifted his gaze up. "What happened here?" Richard sighed. "I suspect that he may have even worse clandestine photos because on that day, Richard looked down and massaged his brow. Immediately James understood. Even more spectacular scenes had transpired on that day. Is there a mole among the bodyguards in the National Security Agency? If not, how could anyone have shot such a picture? Investigations are already ongoing. Right now, the key issue is to figure out how to fix this situation." "Who is this woman?" James asked amusedly. "I didn't expect Big Brother to even have a private life." Richard raised his head and gazed at him coolly. "It's Olivia.